It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
Welcome to the Sweep Spot Podcast. My name is Lynn, your host, and Ken is my co-host. Ken, how's it going?
Oh, Lynn, it is going, and I'm looking forward to this episode of the Sweep Spot Podcast.
Yes, Ken and I are both former Disneyland custodial cast members, and we talk Disneyland. We
All right.
are also authors of two books, both titled Cleaning the Kingdom. We have 2 volumes, and you can get those on our website signed by both of us at thesweepspot.com. That's sweep like sweeping the floor. Spot.com. And also we have them on Kindle, like electronic books, digital, and then we also have them on audiobooks, and you can get those through Audible or wherever audiobooks are found.
Get them in every form that we have them.
That's
There you
right.
go.
Collect
That's
them.
what all the cool people are doing. Yeah.
Also, if you'd like to help support our show, we'd really appreciate it. Helps us keep all those old episodes up. The whole catalog of over 363 episodes, because this is number 363, Ken.
363. That's amazing, Lynn. I can hardly believe it.
So you can
Wow.
help support our show by going to Patreon and searching The Sweep Spot and joining, or you can go to our website, thesweepspot.com, and there's a Patreon link there. And for $5 or more a month, you can get 1 bonus episode per month recorded by Ken and I.
Yeah.
And also you can join in on our current events episode once a month, where we interact with you in the chat room while we record the current events, and that's once a month.
Yeah. All right. That's, because the other episodes in between these topical episodes that we're doing, we have our current events shows, and we update you on what's happening at the resorts contemporarily, what's happening now.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you subscribe or follow the podcast, you won't miss those episodes. You'll get something just about every week. But if you join our Patreon, you get a little more.
That's right. Also, I wanted to mention that I've been subbing on another podcast, the DL Weekly. I've been co-hosting with Teresa over there for the last few weeks now, and I have a few more to go. So you can go over the DL Weekly, and if you want to hear more of me. Wanted to say welcome to any of the listeners of DL Weekly that maybe have come from there to start listening to our show. Welcome. Also,
Yeah.
wanted to mention, and we haven't mentioned this, we try to mention this every time, and we'll put another link in our show notes. But if you want to help our good friend Jim Korkis, he's in the hospital recovering with some medical issues. They're doing a GoFundMe, and we have a link for that, and you can go over there and help him. And another way you can help him is by buying his books, his great catalog of Disney history books, Jim Korkis. Ken.
Yes.
Who's our guest tonight?
Well, we have Stephen Riggs, and Stephen has worked multiple roles, not just at Disneyland, but elsewhere too. So we're going to hear about that. And there's a lot to squeeze in because he's done a lot. And he'll probably have some great stories to tell. So, so it's another perspective from another former cast member. So stay tuned and turn up the volume. Make sure those around you can hear the show as well.
I'm looking forward to it. Looking to book a vacation to Disneyland Resort, Walt Disney World Resort, Disney Cruise Line, Disney Alani, Disneyland Paris, Adventures by Disney, Universal Studios Hollywood, Universal Studios Orlando, then I can do that for you. If you contact me and we can talk about all the different options and dates, and we can kind of even make recommendations on which days might be the best for you to go. And also as a complimentary, when you book with us, we will book your dining for you if you'd like, special events. And we also, when we book a vacation for you, we just don't say have a good time after we book it for you. We are there every step of the way. We contact you before your trip to make sure everything's squared away. We even have a checklist to make sure that you have everything you need. Reservations, dining, all these different things. Your transportation, if you need help with that from the airport, any of those sort of things, we can help you with that too. We want to make the vacation the best it can be for you, because I know that vacations aren't cheap, and we can help you do that. So if you contact me, that's Lynn, and the email is lbarron@concierge.com. That's LBARRON @concierge.com, or you can go to the sweepspot.com, and there's a link on our front page there. You can click on that and there's information on how to contact me. But I'd love to talk to you and help you book the best vacation possible.
A magical place was born, a place of enchantment and adventure, laughter and imagination, where new worlds of joy and wonder just waited to be discovered. And in this marvelous kingdom, there lived many delightful friends who made our dreams come true. Today, we invite you to celebrate 50 years of magical memories with your Disney family as we proudly present Walt Disney's Parade of Dreams. We dedicate it to dreamers around the world and to that special dream that first began when Walt Disney proclaimed...
So, Stephen, you've had a lot of different roles, not only in Disneyland, but in other resorts and Disney locations over the whole world. So kind of give us a little rundown of everything you've done, and we'll kind of come back and look at everything individually.
Yes, that sounds good. Yeah, so happy to be chatting with both of you guys. I'm such a fan of the podcast. And I got started at Disneyland and grew up in Southern California. It was a natural place to get a college job, and then ended up going to Tokyo Disney. That got me to Disney World. That got me on a Disney Live tour to over 20 countries, mostly Asia and Europe. And then I ended up going to Disneyland Paris, and they gave me a contract. I ended up going there for about a year. And then I left and thought I was done, and then did a Disney Cruise Line contract at the end of that. So yeah, I've been to a lot of places, but yeah, it all started at Disneyland. That's so yeah.
So you said it all started at Disneyland. Why did you want to work at Disneyland? What drew you there?
Actually, Brian Frank, do you know that? I wonder if you guys would know him from Custodial. Yeah. High school friend. I'm curious to hear what you think. Find out on the podcast. He was a great friend back in the day. We weren't super close, but such a great guy. And it was seeing him Christmas break of my freshman year of college, and I was overdue for getting a job. And he said, I've been working as a custodial sweeper, I think, and it's great. And, he was talking it up. And so I'm thinking, custodial, janitor? I had a grandfather who was a janitor, for a while. And I thought, yeah, this actually sounds great. The way he talked about it, and all the ways you guys talk about how it's great, really. So I went down to TDA at his behest, and one of those big hiring events they were doing all the time back in, around that time, early 2003. And, And so I want, the group interview, they're like, what do you want to do? And I didn't want to be too, I don't know, jungle cruise skipper, right? No, I actually said, well, I got a friend in custodial who's the reason I came here. And so, I'd be happy doing that, and then, the two other people next to me are sitting there kind of like, giving weird faces. And I got called back in and the guy says, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. What's the best job you can give me? And he says, I think attractions for you, like a jungle cruise skipper. And he like pulls something up on the computer and he says, oh, we don't have any spots for that. Last week we did, we don't this week. And so how about Adventureland? You do Indiana Jones and then you could be a jungle skipper, in a few months, 4 or 6 months. And I was like, that sounds great. I just let him decide for me. And that's where I ended up. And then I ended up cross training to Main Street Vehicles, Ken, the fire truck. I remember the Hub Crawl podcast where they said everybody's favorite job, if you could do any job, if we went back, that fire truck was pretty fun to drive. That was pretty awesome.
I bet.
So, yeah. And actually Steve, the famous Steve who worked there, I was a different Steve, but, I was born in 1984. And I think I heard that might've been when he started, I'm sure I talked to him about it back in the day, but, I was 19, I think, when I got that role. And it was, actually how I got that role was, one of the managers, it'd been, I don't know, 6 months, and I was, ready to get cross-trained on something. And so it was somebody sent me over to the main scheduling, go talk to the main scheduler where you go, we're still looking the book. And you never talk to those ladies around the corner in the office, but, I did. And as soon as I walked in, stumbled out something about, hey, so-and-so said, come talk to one of you about cross-training. And she just looks up at me and immediately says, you know how to drive a stick shift? And I fired back, I drive a stick shift to work every day. And she says, it's just Main Street Vehicles will be on your schedule in 2 weeks. And that was it. That was how I got it. It was serendipity. The right moment. It was just luck. Yeah.
Wow. Well, let's go back a little bit to Indy, because that's one of my favorite attractions. I know Ken is fond of that. Yeah.
Oh, I love hearing you guys talk over the years with different people about Indy. It was all that. It was so fun. I was over the Pirates and Princess event. I was there. I worked that night. And you know how everybody tells about going to that pen at Big Thunder Ranch? I walked over there, saw what it was about, and I was like, "Oh no, this is prison." And so I was like, "This is a dressed up Disney jail." And so I immediately somehow was standing next to a lead, and I stood on their hip, and they had a reason to go back to Indy, and I went back with them. And then there was a skeleton crew. I realized that all the attractions, I mean, you can't leave the park blank, so there was really skeleton crews around the park that didn't go, and I somehow just snuck in with them and a group of, I won't say who, I actually can't remember exactly who it was, but 3 or 4 of us tagged out with somebody who had the authority, to tag out on the attraction because it was totally closed. And I was tagged out for well over an hour, maybe 2. And we went all through that attraction, every little nook and cranny. You've heard all the other stories. It was so much fun. We went over to Pirates after we tagged out of that. And somehow I got to walk around parts of that attraction that night and other nights with, it was so fun. It was so neat to do that.
Which night were you talking? You were talking about the Pirates premiere?
The Pirates premiere. Yeah. It was like, I never should have been, all the, I'm standing there grouping when all these real celebrities are coming down and I'm supposed to tell them which row to get in for the car, and it's just like, sometimes I couldn't stumble out words, when Keira Knightley walks down and she's radiating an energy and you're like, you can point to the vehicle, wherever you want, there's no line, but I got all the stories about the funny, look at that everybody does. Oh, that celebrity, they look like this and that. But the other times working there were so much fun, just the regular stuff with the regular guests. I always tried to make it my mission to not get people to go to City Hall. I knew I was an annual pass holder like you guys. I grew up going to the parks. And so I just had such a love for it and such a reverence for like Disney customer service and knowing how good it could be. And so, and the training at the time was second to none. And although I did stuff I even shouldn't have done. I remember like my first week, somebody came and got me that they dropped sunglasses, really expensive prescription sunglasses out of the Tarzan's treehouse. and they couldn't find anybody around. And I was at the, front checking heights for Indy. And so I go through the treehouse with him. I end up crawling out like 15 feet out of that treehouse, down in the middle of the middle of that tree, not near the forest floor where I shouldn't have been, fall out and break my arm. But I got their sunglasses. They were so over the moon. I go to tell my friend at work and he's like, don't tell this story to anyone. You'll get fired, And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I shouldn't go above and beyond that way, but wow. Yeah. It was all that other guest stuff that was so fun, and Indy was the best cue, and it was such a cool costume, and but it went down so much. You guys remember how much it went? You guys were in there having to clean up the hydraulic oil and all the other stuff.
Oh yeah,
but,
yeah.
I'll tell you, I found myself really growing up moment. A chance to win on that attraction had been down for all day. They should have sent us home and been down for the night, but they didn't. And they had given out so many readmits, and they had stacked up so many fast passes and people who had been kicked off the ride because it broke down three or more different times. And so many people. And I remember the lights around Adventureland. They were going to open it. Finally, it was going to open, and I somehow was out with another half a dozen cast members about to. How are we going to drop the rope? Because we looked out and there was no one walking through Adventureland. It was literally standing room only in Adventureland, like it was the most crowded, middle of a concert scene you've ever wanted to see. And everybody's looking at themselves going, how do we can't open the ropes. We don't know how to do this. And I for some reason, I thought I could get up on a trash can. So I got up on a trash can and I called out to the people, and I did theater, and I don't have Ken's voice, but I was able to really project and talk to thousands of people and tell them, if you're holding one of these, you're going to go this way, and if you're not, you're going this way. I somehow directed them, and then I watched as we dropped the ropes after everyone listened to me, and I watched just thousands and thousands of people just pour into Indiana Jones queue, and I doing exactly what I had just implored them to do, and it was pretty great. But no, just hanging out at the time we had Fast Pass. And I loved hanging out near the Jungle Cruise, having those skippers. I swear, David, he was making fun of me. David Martin, who's been on your podcast. I swear I'd be standing at Indy exit queue, and he'd be making up jokes about me, every time around the river. It was the skippers were awesome, and the Fast Pass being down in the Jungle Boathouse. They had taken away. Jungle Cruise didn't need as big a queue then. And so they had taken part of the boathouse. And I loved, people would always hate working there. And I loved working there. I had a Jungle Cruise skipper girlfriend for part of the time. And, so that was probably a reason. But no, I loved working outside in Adventureland there. Like, you guys got to roam the park, and I felt like working Fast Pass, working outside. Indy was fun to work inside, but yeah, it was neat to be out in the park and then solving guests issues out there. People don't have a Fast Pass, and they got an issue about something else, and hey, I've got extra Fast Passes. Will that solve your problem? And it often will. And now they can't do that with the app stuff probably, but I was always having extra Fast Passes and those sorts of things you could do for people.
They can still kind of well, they can scan your phones now and add like a Fast Pass onto your phone now. A Genie Plus or whatever they want to call it.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. I remember we had these readmits that I think we had I remember keeping stacks of them once when I was supposed to go put them back in the locker after, they said, hey, yeah, we've been, we were passing these out, go put them back. And I saw some other leads, and leads always had a pocket of them. And I was like, I'm not going to misuse these. I'll put them in my pocket just like the leads. And then I did. And I had them the rest of the time. Even when I moved to characters and I was a character host there, I was still solving guest issues by giving them a readmit. And I'd put the Adventureland office number, and nobody ever noticed, or, if they did, I did, the guest got on their attraction and got to use it. And nobody knew where to find me as the guy giving them out. But it was always for good reasons. I always, always the right reasons. It was great being there doing that stuff.
So you'd mentioned that when you hired in that they'd mentioned something about Jungle Cruise. Did you ever get over there?
No, because I did Indy, and then I did Main Street Vehicles. And then I ended up having a girlfriend at the time who was a character. And a short-lived relationship. She's a great friend for many years, though. But it was just, she was talking up how great characters had it and what a great job that was. And standing around on Main Street in Town Square, watching the characters a bunch, I thought, yeah, that does sound like fun. I kind of had a background in theater and improv and all that stuff. So I thought, let's go try that out, But I mean, I could have done the vehicles for years and loved it. You know, it was such a great job. It was like, move over to this, you know, also dream job. You know, I got spoiled like that, you know, but I'd love to go back and do any of those, you know, once or twice here, because it was just so neat, you know, so much fun.
So you were like a character host, is that what they call it?
I got first a costumed character, you know, friends with Goofy and all of Beast, a lot of friends with Beast and Queen of Hearts and Captain Hook. And then after a few months of that, went to a different audition to then also be a character host. And I did that then for the next, you know, both of those, you know, and then I ended up leaving both of those to go do the parade when they opened the 50th anniversary parade. And then
right.
And I mean, everybody, because they didn't let characters do parades then, but I thought, you know, everybody in the character department went to that audition. That was just, they needed to open Block Party Bash at the same time, and they just hired so many into that department to open those two shows. And so I had a really good day at the audition, and yeah, so then they hired me as 2-day Prince Charming and 3 days standby for that parade. And so standby meant I learned everything that I could possibly do, which was, I think was like 26 different things. And then so I'd go to work, and then any of those things you'd get scheduled for on it, you know, but it wasn't quite, you know, you kind of knew it wasn't going to be any one of 26. It was more like, you're going to be doing, you know, the Beast and the Queen of Hearts all summer, because those people left. And, you know, the guys on stilts always show up to work. So you're never going to do that, you know, but yeah.
Do you have any stories that you want to share, some funny or interesting moments?
Oh yeah. Well, I just said stilts, and I actually, you guys, you know, the media day, May 4th. Lynn, weren't you on parades then?
Yeah, I think I was parade lead that day. Yeah.
Oh goodness, you weren't on Main Street, I hope.
Yeah, I was at the hub. Yeah.
Oh, you were at the hub. Well, they had a bank of cameras that that was most of the way down, almost down to Town Square, because we went back of the park to the front for this parade, and it was, you know, this is the media one. Well, I was supposed to be a standby. I wasn't supposed to be in the parade, and so I got all the way to step off. You know, the parade was stepping off, and I had, like, I think it was an antibiotic or something that I didn't even need to take, but I said, take with food. You know, I thought, okay, I'm going to go get a snack right now, and I'm going to watch this parade while I eat my snack, and don't take it if you're going to exercise and on empty stomach. And I had an empty stomach. Well, they came and ran and got me, because some guy they thought was on property twice, he lost his ID 2 times. And so he was a jumping stilt flower. And so there was this whole, he didn't show up, and they didn't know it until right at step off. And so they ran and got me of the other couple standbys they could have grabbed. And I got to do, you know, they threw me in. The makeup ladies are doing this, you know, by the way, I learned stilts for the parade. I'd never been on these before the parade training.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm like, this is amazing. I'm going to do the jumping stilt. You know, I got thrown in at the last second, you know, no time to think about it. No time to be scared. I mean, I had 15 minutes to be scared, you know, maybe not that even, it was 10 minutes, you know, and they were like, it's okay, because the Alice float is, you know, the 4th or 5th one. So you got time, you know, but so they hurried up. They got me out there. I'm doing the whole parade. This is amazing. I'm on these jumping stilts. I'm doing it for the cameras. This is amazing. I can't believe it. But I'm feeling so sick halfway down this route. And that's why I mentioned the antibiotic, because I shouldn't have been sick, but I got to feeling bad. And I made it all the way to the end of the last show stop. There was 3 show stops for that parade. And at the end of the 3rd one, it was all the way down Main Street. And I got sick, but the consummate performer that I was, I looked at where that bank of TV cameras I'd just been performing for, and I walked so that I was directly behind that bank of cameras, and then I just let go, like almost like dry heave a little bit of water, you know, that I'd had right before, and as soon as it came, all over the edge of the sidewalk, you know, right on the edge of the, you know, sidewalk, and nobody was around. It was right off where nobody was, because it's just behind cameras. And then, you know, the parade lead sees this, you know, and so a couple other people see it, and so I'm trying to get back, and now I feel fine, because my stomach kind of like rolled over and got it out, and you know, and I'm thinking, okay, I can suck it up and do this. But the parade lead comes over, you know, grabs me, you know, says something, you know, and made me walk off. And I think it might have been the only time I ever used the gate at Center Street. I mean, I never had a reason to walk through Center Street. I think that's where they pulled me off. They had me like walk off the route, which was fine, because we just done our last performance for the big bank of cameras there, you know, at the show stop. But yeah, oh my goodness, Code V, you know, on the media day parade,
you're sparking a memory that I totally forgot about. But I remember that. I remember hearing a radio call about a code V in the middle of that parade because I was the parade lead. And I remember hearing
you would have
that is so
you would have
funny.
absolutely had that call and that's so cool, man.
Yeah, I remember that now.
That's
crazy.
neat. Yeah, and then I tried to talk them into. I think they did a parade back up, and they're like, "Nope, you're out of it. You're not back." I feel fine, guys. I feel fine. It was because I took this pill, and I feel good now. They're like, "Nah, you sit it out." They never let me do that jumping stilt the rest of the summer until I left to go to Tokyo. I never got on this. I got one time they let me get on them backstage between parades. I said I need to practice at least if I ever go in, and they're like, roll their eyes like, "You're never going back into that, dude." You know, we got other standbys for that. You're the last guy on the list. You know, but I did it once, and I threw up off camera. So
what a time to work at the resort. You know, Ken and I were both there during that time, and the 50th. What a huge deal that was. What a lot of fun.
It was so great. The fireworks show when we did our overnights for that parade. Everybody who did those overnights that got to sit, that was the night when they shot off the fireworks for the first time to do the testing, you know, and so we got to have we're sitting there in Town Square or up Main Street, and it just, you know, such a skeleton crew of people at the park getting to stand there, and that show with the full fire coming off the, you know, the fireworks and the lasers right off of the Main Street buildings, and we weren't even ready for that, you know. I've been going to the park my whole life, and the fireworks are, you know, up behind the castle. I know where the fireworks come out.
That was probably,
you know?
the best fireworks show they've had ever since. I mean, ever. I think.
Yeah, I don't know how you top that. I mean, because I think like everything, the stuff started to go away towards the end when I saw it a couple years later. I mean, if I didn't go to Tokyo, I would have got replaced by nobody. I think I went back a year and a half later or something and saw the parade of dreams, and there were no princes anymore with the princesses, you know, cost cutting. Like, you guys weren't that important, you know. The parade's been out long enough. We had to get rid of somebody, so no more princes. And so I was there, right time, right place. But
right. Ken, did you have a question?
Well, now we know who put the code V there.
I know, right?
I've been wondering for all this time, and now we finally know.
I forgot about it.
Sorry about that, Ken. Sorry.
That's okay.
I think the Main Street lead ended up getting it. Yeah.
At least it wasn't Lynn. At least it wasn't a banana peel.
That's true.
No, I remember that. I think, was it Rod? So somebody was telling one of the guys you had interviewed on here was saying about the Indiana Jones Tower. There's a woman who I believe number 2 in a wastebasket in India. And I remember working. That was a story that went around Indy for a long time, you know, because I remember like working that day. But now that I think of it, I'm like, they might have just been telling that in the break room, like it happened, you know. I don't remember if it happened that year, or it could have been. I'm sure that people who worked there for years heard that story, you know. But
talk about the Temple of Doom. I mean, you know.
Well, like, you know, like you said, they learned their lesson. You got to put a guest bathroom that far back when you got that queue.
It probably happened more than once, you know. But it's definitely happened.
Yeah.
Now, most of my stories were better than that, you know. They were cleaner than that. But I mean, the parade stories were pretty interesting, you know. Although, that's what I was trying to remember. In Tokyo, it was Jiminy Cricket. The you know, because there's the stories about Disneyland, you know, with the characters not in full costume, you know, backstage, you know, although if there's guests around, you know, as there got to be later years, you know, usually if they were out of their break rooms, they're usually in full costume, but not really in full character, you know. And if something's wrong, you know, they're like, hey, this is backstage. But in Tokyo, only that character's break room, you know, behind that secondary door is where they're going to be taking that costume off and breaking character. And there was once where Pinocchio was on a night parade float, or not Pinocchio, I'm sorry, Jiminy Cricket. Jiminy Cricket was up where you had to use a cherry picker to get up to him, you know, so they had to lift, you know, put him in with a lift. Well, Jiminy, I'm sorry, was sick and got sick, and it was a code V coming out Jiminy's mouth, and Jiminy waited for that cherry picker to get them out before, stayed in full costume. Did not take off any bit of that costume, you know, and the American performer would have been stripping down, you know, if they had a code V, you know, but Jiminy was sucking it up literally. And then I watched, you know, a good 5 minutes until they got her, you know, her got down, and then walked all the way into the parade building, full costume, didn't take it off, you know, coming down the front, you know. I couldn't believe it. You know, the dedication to staying in character that they had in Tokyo, you know, but, I
apologize to any of our listeners who are eating right now. I mean,
Right? Oh goodness. Tokyo, but American story was when I did. There was Prince Charming in the parade at Disneyland, and then I went to Tokyo right after that, and got to be friends with Prince Charming as well. And my very first day out there with Prince Charming, the very first day of my Tokyo contract, the very first group of Disney fans walked up to me, and the little girl hands me a photo to sign of Prince Charming, of myself. And it literally is of myself from California. And it was taken from the side of the parade float, like right up next to it. And I was like, wow, I was stunned. I didn't know what to, I was like, I'd heard about the Disney fans already, but people who'd been there and were, oh, this is going to be amazing. And yeah, but they know who I am. They knew I was going to be here. They were ready with my picture. I went back a year after I left my Tokyo contract, and I was in the park, and I ran into a fan, and she walked me over to some other fans, and they pulled out a binder of photos from next to the bench they had in their big bag, and in it she pulled out some photos of me and her, and I was like, wow, you have photos of me, and you don't know that I'm in your country. I've been here for a year. The fans in Tokyo neat. Were interesting.
That's neat. Different cultures and having to bring the Disney characters there, and I mean, well, that's been going on for years, but you were a part of that.
A small part. I did one contract, it was it was fun. That was the thing. I did a lot of Disney stuff, but I think you could tell it was 6-9 months or a year, and then I was getting to switch to a different show or a different job, and so I was just so lucky that I just kept saying yes to everything, but yeah, it was like you go back and you go, oh yeah, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I had those stories and with those people, and a little bit of it got onto YouTube, and I can still go back and see it, but a lot of it, like I was thinking of the fire truck and the omnibus on Main Street. I don't have any pictures of me in those costumes that I know of. It's like, oh wow, I really wish I had a picture of me in that costume. Somewhere. I know there's somewhere, but I don't think I have any.
Speaking of the Main Street vehicles, I was there last week and I was watching them drive those vehicles, and I thought that must be really hard with guests and kids running. Could just jump out of anywhere.
Yeah. The joke was, it wasn't a joke. It was like, hey, if you touch anybody with the vehicle, you're fired, and that would usually, come on the heels of thinking after the ends of like fireworks, we'd be out there for guest control. We pull the vehicles off, and then we do parade or guest control. And then as soon as it's done, and whoever it was gives the all clear, you pull the vehicle right out from behind Firehouse Gate and you get back on the street. And sometimes you get told to get back out there, and there's about 30,000 people coming down the street towards you. In a flood, and I'm supposed to drive the bus up the street while it's a stick shift, by the way. So you're feathering the clutch with both feet, feathering the clutch because you're barely moving down the street. You got to keep from stalling, and then one hand on the microphone because you got to be spieling, giving the spiel, telling everybody, hey, Steve Martin used to work at the magic shop, all the different I forget the spiel, but I think that was in it for a few years, but yeah, it was so much fun. But yeah, definitely hard and thrilling. Really, it was thrilling to drive that. It was so much fun to drive, even with all those people. You'd think there would be crazy. I don't have crazy stories. I only did it a year, less than a year, but of people being hit in the vehicle, one time, some teenagers, I think, hey, being a smart guy, smacking the side of the fire truck or something. But otherwise people were just generally, they'd get out of the way and they'd be really nice. And you'd just go as slow as the vehicle could possibly go against traffic. And, but, it was neat. And being on guest control, I loved parade guest control. Phantasmic, I couldn't stand Phantasmic guest control. Why? It was so because the couple of shifts I had doing it, they were all about telling me, wave this and keep people moving. You stand here and keep people moving. And I couldn't do that. I wasn't good at that. Keep people moving. But at Town Square, I'm dressed, either, not usually in the fire truck outfit, but in the, just regular omnibus or the vehicle carriage outfit, which, this nice white dress shirt, these nice, dark slacks and a tie and that hat. And, it just looks so sharp and in charge, and so even the parade, guest control, I mean, not just parade, but like, regular attractions, guest control leads who are over there working crowd control. They tended to give us vehicle Town Square people. And same with the Mr. Lincoln ladies, because back then I think it was like all ladies working at the Mr. Lincoln show. I don't know if it couldn't be guys. It just wasn't guys, yeah, that we all were like, you know, we ran that town square for parades when it came to guest control, and everybody just kind of let us do it, and there was less yelling, and because I was just had the personality, I always knew how to watch, and so after just a few shifts, I mean, I knew every single place that I could get a guest, all the way up and through when the parade had started, you know, because there were always the guest issues of getting kicked out of their spot or wanting to stop somewhere they shouldn't, you know, all the issues that come up with seating, you know, and viewing. And I loved putting out those fires. I was so good at being able to get people a better spot than they originally had, you know, and being so nice to them, even though they probably didn't deserve it the way they were acting. But I really did just be like, no, this could make or break their vacation. You know, I remember having a manager, I think they called him Disney Dave. You know, I remember Dave Atkins. Oh yeah. Do you know Dave Atkins?
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
I think he worked all around attractions for many years. I don't know what else he would have done, but he was a great manager to me, and you know, helped me a couple of times when I might have started getting myself on the, you know, I cared a lot about stuff, and so if people, you know, had their phones out back then, which wasn't a big deal, you know, or were, you know, just weren't being Disney in the ways that they, you know, all those sorts of ways that, you know, certain cast members don't care, and he was, you know, took me aside a couple of times and like helped me out with like, hey, you got to leave, you know, what do you concern yourself with, you know, what do you actually, you know, need to focus on, kind of stuff. But yeah, that kind of leadership back then was really good in the attractions department, and so I had a great time there. Yeah,
man. And you had mentioned in little thing you'd sent to me about grad nights. We worked grad nights, but we didn't have to work the whole night. We were off. I think at 1:30 was the latest we had to work. So. Oh yeah, I remember getting scheduled a couple of those, and getting 6th and 7th, you know, that kind of extra pay, because I had one shift where, you know, it was like I didn't even go home. I just napped in a break room, I think in Tomorrowland. And somewhere it was, you know, out of my area, but it was like I got sent there at the end of the guest control, and it's like, I got to be back on the clock in 4 hours. Isn't this amazing? I'm making so much money on this next shift, you know, double time. And oh man. But yeah, so I remember mouthing off to Theme Park 1 and being told this right after I had no idea who I was talking to, but I was being so annoyed with, however, I got sent out, you know, at first my experience was, you know, you're standing out there in the Esplanade, just wherever we tell you to direct the kids, just do it. And so I was doing it, but I was noticing that whoever was in charge just wasn't doing a good a job as they could with guest flow. Like I said, I've been going to the parks my whole life. And so I was just like, I'm standing there being like all cocky and annoyed, like they should be doing this and they should be moving that and letting these kids in there. And so sure enough, I went from mouthing off to just one of my coworker attraction guys to like Theme Park 1 was standing there. And I started telling him as though he was just, you know, one of my, you know, fellow nobodies. And then he walks off, and my lead just walks up so mad at me. You know, do you know who you were just talking to? That was Theme Park 1. I was like, oh, wow, good. Maybe he'll do something about it. And, you know, and they walked off, and I thought, oh no, I hope, you know, what's going to happen? And sure enough, I watched the gates move, and everything I said ought to happen just happened, and the guy took all my advice and he agreed with it. He just did it, and then I got sent into the park to go to the hub or something, and nothing was ever made of it. And I thought, oh, that was so much fun. I better watch out next time I do that, you know. But, so you're doing guest control on a grad night? Is that all you did? Oh,
yeah, okay. It was just guest control. Oh, actually, I got sent into the hub on one grad night, and there was a big, you know, dance party, and some girl fell down and slipped and broke her leg. And I got called over there by her friend, and I looked at her leg. I was like, that's a broken leg. You know, it's not sticking out of the skin, but that's broken, and she's sure of it, and I'm sure of it. And so I walked over to the, you know, nearest cast member with a walkie-talkie and told them, you know, to radio it in, and they did. And oh, it was so amazing. I'm back over with this girl, you know, for all of 30 seconds, and just, you know, next to Carnation Plaza, you know, the gates open, and just like, you know, the ambulances were on Main Street, and, you know, it was like the cavalry came and the seas parted. You know, you just watch these thousands of kids having a dance party, and somehow they all it just moved, and everybody who should come in, and this girl within, you know, 4 minutes is back there, you know, on an ambulance getting help, and then everybody's back to the dance party, you know, 2 minutes after that. And I was like, wow, Disney knows how to do it right, you know, because I'd only been working in the parks, you know, a few months when I was doing those shifts. But that was a pretty neat experience watching that all happen.
So you were in the beginning, you were talking a little bit about the Pirates premiere. I remember that was a huge deal, because I don't think that up to that first one, they didn't really have like a big movie premiere like this. And I remember the
No.
grandstands they put in and that huge screen they brought in with the helicopter. It's just,
Oh yeah, it was
yeah.
so cool, right? That was so neat.
Yeah.
I only peeked at it from the edge of, Tomorrowland. I got to see
Yeah.
it, or no, yeah, and then the edge of that Big Thunder Ranch. We're walking around backstage to there. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was so neat how they had it set up. But you guys probably got to see a lot more of that. I remember they had other like soap opera days and some other special events back in those days that were kind of neat. They would, or just they would have companies, shut down or buy. They would buy Adventureland because it was like one of, Adventureland and New Orleans Square, and then shut it down for a night, and work in those. And those are kind of, interesting shifts. But
Yeah,
I always liked the
remember
really
those.
busy ones with the guests, good, because it was just like more stuff to do, keeping us busy. It wasn't like you guys where it was like you had to sweat extra. It was like, no, the ride's only going to go to capacity, and you guys are just walking past me anyway. It's just a chance for more fun interactions. And although
Yeah.
I was into theater stuff at the time, and
Mhm.
I remember doing voices. I remember like, oh, I'm never going to see these people again, so if I want to try out a British accent, well, I'll just try it there. Blimey, governor, it'd be from different parts, and it's like, well then, oh mate, I could be from Australia, and you just try out different accents, and people would just, interact with you, and it brightened people's days. I watched guests just be so excited, to ask, oh yeah, certain accents are just fun to talk with, so yeah, I was always doing crazy fun stuff like that, interacting with guests. But
That's
yeah.
good. I like that kind of stuff. I wonder how many people thought you were, that nationality, that
Right.
you were.
Well, I hope all of them, because otherwise, I'm just a weirdo who's doing an accent, and so you're like, oh, no, I'm a theater kid. I'm just brushing up on my, I can get an acting job someday. No, I'm not. But yeah, well, I did. I got to do Bert, they let me do Bert at Tokyo and Disney
really?
World. And yeah, so, I did have to use it. And yeah, well, it just voices in general. I remember Jack Sparrow. I mean, in Disney World, I got, picked to do that, and then it was, I say picked because I didn't even audition. I got picked.
Yeah.
I actually got hired at Disney World, but because my girlfriend at the time had worked at Disneyland, Tokyo, and Disney World, and she sent an email because and said, hey, would you have a spot for me and my boyfriend? Here's our resume and pictures. And the casting said, yeah, sure, come on down to Disney World. We might even pay to help you move. And so I was like, really? You got us a job like that? And we get to be face characters and parades and shows? And, it was like, yeah. So I lucked into a few different things. But yeah. And so then when they said, I got to Disney World, and they said, no, actually, you're too good of a dancer. We don't want you to be a face character, and I said, well, that's thank you, but like face characters make like, however much more an hour. And so I was like, I moved here thinking I was going to make this much an hour. And so even though this job is super fun, I mean, because they asked me I got to do the trolley show, that famous trolley show down Main Street. I mean, that was amazing. It was amazing. So much better than standing there, with Prince Charming. But still, it was so because I said, well, I don't know, I might have to go look for a different job where I make more money. She said, well, wait. How about if you also, we'll train you with Bert, and we'll train, Jack Sparrow is going to do these pirate and princess special events coming up. And so we'll get you to do those. And so they did. And face character Captain Hook and Dream Along with Mickey. And so then I got to do that, well, I got to train for that. And then I got myself hired for the Disney Live gig. And so during the nighttime overnights, where I got to do Captain Hook, for that show, for the overnights, that, as the person who hired me, or got me to do the show, is showing me how I just did on my run through on her video camera, standing in the hub as we're having a cigarette together. I'm like, I really appreciate you getting me this job, but by the way, I just took a different one with Disney Live, so I'm gonna be putting in my month's notice here. She's like, seriously, but yeah, it was that was an awesome show, and I couldn't turn that one down. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, sorry, a lot to. Well, which question do you ask? I got away from Disneyland, but
no, it's fine. I think it's amazing you got to play all these different characters. Jack Sparrow is probably a super popular character, especially during that time.
Oh yeah, that just felt like the coolest thing to get picked to do that. And then I actually knew I was done in Disney Paris when they were fitting me for Jack Sparrow, and I said no thank you. And I was like, I was like, well, wait a second, I might have to be done here. You know, there's like one of those moments where they're like, hey, how about Jack Skellington and Jack Sparrow? And I was like, that's a lot of makeup, guys. I don't know. Like, it's just, I'm kind of tired. I was like, well, if I'm too tired to do these, like they're offering me like amazing jobs. Maybe, so that's what I realized that I did. I put in my notice eventually there at Disney Paris. And I thought I was done with Disney. I thought I needed to, move on. And then, a year after that, I was like, oh, I want to feel good about myself. I know, I'll go to this Disney Cruise Line audition I see is coming up because I'm really good at Disney auditions. And so it'll just be a confidence booster. And it was. And then they called me and offered me to do one. And I eventually did. But yeah, it was, I said confidence booster because all along I was just like happy to be there, And when I was thinking back on like different jobs I'd go back and do, at this point in my life, gosh, I'd go be a sweeper. I mean, it'd be so much fun. I mean, I don't know if the sweeper jobs are like they were back, 20 years ago, back in 03, 05, but, it was one of those jobs I didn't do that I jokingly said, or half serious in my, initial interview, but it's like listening to all your guys' stories. And then I think, yeah, man, it really was the run of the park and, no issues with guests. You're solving issues in the ways I love to do it. And it was like, because like the part about just sending the vehicle and attractions or checking somebody's seatbelt, there's the cachet of working in certain attractions. And some of them have really cool parts to it. But like you could tell some of my stories about Indy, it's less about the ride vehicle, because other people, I'd rather listen to Imagineers talk about that. For me, it was always like, oh, I got to do this with the guests, or I got to do that with the guests. And it was like, oh man, you sweepers were out there just interacting with the guests, and so all those jobs had more guest interaction, where they were coming to me and I didn't have to, I could help solve a problem. I didn't have to create another one by telling them, nope, you can't sit here. You got to move. No, get me off of Fantasmic.
Custodial is great, but after doing it so many years, I would like to, if I had to go back, I don't think I will, but if I did, I think I would do something different because I've kind of been there, done that,
Well, you got to play music. I've heard you, you gotta get on the stage with, playing some music, but
that'd be amazing.
Both of you guys driving vehicles was awesome. Jungle Cruise skippers had their script. And I always thought that'd be fun, but it was always like, how much can you go off script or not? And we had a script for Main Street vehicles, but that was just when you're driving, and only driving the omnibus. The other vehicles, there was no script. You're just talking to people. And it was just like being their concierge, just like being their guest relations person. They entered the park and they're like, I can get a ride. Most people didn't even really know what the vehicles were. It was probably about 50-50. Half the people, you just smile and greet them, and they'd say hi. They see the sign you're standing next to, go, can we have a ride? Yeah. What do you do? Oh, I'll just drive you down the street. And it was just such a fun way to interact with people and introduce people to and like I said, being an annual pass holder, half my childhood, I was the guy when I sit up in the tower at Indy, they had a big book of stuff and I'd read everything about that attraction. So I was just like, oh, you're supposed to watch the monitors, but between watching the monitors, I'd always have that book in front of me. And after a while, I get bored about reading the stuff about Indy, the safety stuff. And I'd go to the back where they had this whole section on Disney trivia facts, like how many pounds of trash and how many hot dogs we serve and how many flowers get planted in a year and all these fun Disney things. And I started just memorizing them because I thought they were interesting. So when I eventually got over to vehicles, I had all that kind of knowledge, plus the personal work in their knowledge, and a readmit ticket in my pocket if you're a really good guest, and so that was so great. If you go back, those are the kinds of jobs, it's like, oh, guest relations, that's neat. But man, that vehicle job was really just like a guest relations job that you made it what you want it to be,
Yeah, for sure. Wow.
Ken, I have some questions from Ken. I've been talking too much here. I haven't heard you chime in.
No, you're good.
I'm just trying to keep track of all the different divisions of the company you worked for.
I know. I start talking and you get one question and then I move on to a totally different topic. And it's like, wait a second, what were we talking about? I know. But yeah, it's I mean, there were other people who had the cooler jobs. Mine were like the fun, I got to stand and wave and be, oh, that's what I was thinking of. When I first hired in, it was the exploring backstage stuff, that I probably should have done. Yeah. Don't incriminate myself now, but it was, never anything bad, but it was going down to the submarines, when they didn't run, they'd been in dry dock there, for years and years, back
Ken
in
knows about that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking of. And so it's like, I loved that stuff. And driving the omnibus, we got to, drive it around and park it. And then, there were reasons to drive it around the backside of the park. So it was like driving that around the backside of the park was just one of those experiences, that you just couldn't beat, getting to stop. It's like, it's just a whole different side of Disney when you get to go all the way through. Oh, we actually, during that time I drove the omnibus, there was the Parade of the Stars. And they had a thing where they would pick up like these, I would take the bus to the parade building and pick up the parade performers. And then we'd go down Main Street and they would get guests to be in the parade. And then they'd all load onto the omnibus. We get down to the parade step off down in, Town Square. And then they'd have their whole load of guests. And then I'd just drive the omnibus around, and pull it off and go do guest control eventually. But I'm doing this and getting to know the parade performers for a few months. And then, a year and a half later, I showed up to that parade audition. And at the, after we danced in the parade audition, a couple of these performers, they'd been there, these were the seasoned performers, they'd been there for years. And they come up to me and they're just incredulous. Like, why did you not tell us you were a dancer? How come? How did this never come up? Like you could do this and you never told us? And I just looked at him and I said, you wouldn't have believed me. You guys would have just made fun of me and said, that driver thinks he's a dancer. I'm sure he does. And they just looked at each other and they laughed and they immediately they were like, you're right. We would have. We all had a good laugh about it, because it didn't seem like a dancer when I'm driving the bus, but different things in life.
Did you, something that someone always asks us, it gets asked often for cast members, but did you have any celebrity encounters that you remember?
Oh, yeah, it was, a few different ones over the years. It was like Gary Sinise, stuck out at Disney World because I saw him a few different times, where we're doing meet and greets, after like High School Musical show. And he would always be there with veterans. He did a lot of veteran charity stuff. So that's why he stuck out, because he didn't stick out. He was always just off to the side. And it was like, or you didn't even notice he was there. He's just, you were told by your lead, oh, Gary Sinise has got a group of people, oh yeah, that's the shorthand for, these are going to be some vets on some, coming back from some hard stuff there with their families, And so everybody, and like, I remember at Indy, actually, John Ritter came he came and then he came like a week later or a few days later or something. And he came up and it was like, Steve. And I swear he said it before he saw my name tag, but because everybody always said he was that kind of guy. And it was like, hey, he remembered what we were talking about the last time, because I happened to be working at the exit, when he came up both times. And so it was like, oh, hey, had a little like minute interaction with him, and he's just one of those nicest guys, or I remember Kobe Bryant, he got in a lot of legal trouble back in, 2003. And I was a big Lakers basketball fan. And he came to the park with his wife. Like it was like his first public outing since all of his, hadn't been out in public in months. And then, he was at the park and then he was going to come to the attraction. And so I remember leaving where I was out in the front and telling my friend, if anybody asks where I am, just say I had an emergency, go to the bathroom. That's all you heard. I ran off, I was like, diarrhea will cover for anything, they won't ask more questions. But I went back to the system and because I knew they'd be coming up. Kobe Bryant's going to come up the employee exit area, and so I sat there in the hallway at the computer and the computer keeps telling me, you're supposed to be, wherever I was supposed to be. And so I go walk around the corner out to the loading zone. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to see Kobe. I got to get back to where I am before I get in trouble. And right as I go to go backstage again, where it just does the little, you have to turn left and then turn back right. We almost ran right into each other. If we weren't both so quick and athletic, we both kind of jumped back to the side and gave each other a head nod. He goes, what's up? And I go, what's up? And just walked right past him, followed by all of his security and everybody. And it was like, oh, wow, I got to see him. I almost ran into him. But, that's what I was looking for, is like a 19-year-old kid, oh, this basketball guy I grew up loving, that kind of silly encounter. But I actually had a family member at the time who was big on soap operas. And so I remember having a couple of soap opera guys during the soap opera night event, and they wanted to smoke a cigarette somewhere they weren't supposed to. And I was on guest control over at like Frontierland. And I was like, yeah, they're not supposed to, but I know the one guy and I know that he knows, my family member. And so I just was like, hey, yeah, sure, over here is fine, Oh, and I struck up a conversation with them and we had a nice chat. And then, nobody got in trouble and nobody saw them smoking where they shouldn't have, because it was fine. It just was, backstage in an odd place. And it was just like interesting encounter, But there was another one people would have thought was hilarious, was Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. And they came backstage and he looked like goofy, dressed as a dad, on vacation. He had like brown sandals with like quarter high black socks, and short Bermuda shorts and a big, it was like at a central casting and the biggest smile on his face, and so they had and she looked like this movie star, like Ginger on Gilligan's Island, she was just dressed like and it was just this hilarious dichotomy. And they were having the best time with their family as they were coming through backstage past this character break room, and all these characters got wind that they're about to walk past. And so every character started immediately getting dressed to go out to see them just because they wanted to. It was, right after Chicago and all that. And so, so everybody, they didn't even have to ask for it. It was like, oh, all of a sudden, there was literally over like 10 characters, that just like these different units happened to be in that break room at the moment. And so they got to see all, and I was with the Beast at the time, and Belle wasn't there. And so I knew they didn't want to see me. So I just watched from the window, and then eventually they were there hanging out for like 5 minutes, and it was like kind of time for me to go out. And so then I went out there and, hey, I kind of hung around for, 30 seconds. And then I walked off to go on set because they were all still, playing for a minute before they walked off, I think. And it was just a funny, like, the celebrities didn't have to ask for it because all the people, and, you're not allowed to talk to them as a regular cast member, but, if Pinocchio or, that was kind of who went out to play with him, all those types of characters. And so they're sure, why not? And they had a small child with them, and it was so interesting. But yeah, there was the other sorts of encounters like that. I had lots of them. I can't think of, but it's like none of them that went totally sideways or crazy, but there was the ones you go, oh yeah, those people were really nice, and then so and so wasn't, but not worth bringing up those names anymore. Yeah. But
I'd often have to ask somebody on my crew, who is that?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know any of the celebrities nowadays. I'm so bad. I mean, even with the Disney, IP stuff, I don't have Disney Plus. I mean, I don't know any of them. I was in the High School Musical stuff at Disney World. That dates me. So it was like I remember that was about the end of back when I started kept up with the new young stuff. As far as anyone that's not a cartoon, I can identify the cartoon characters, but not any of the real Disney actors in the last decade.
Yeah, the only ones I would recognize are the big, the obvious ones, it seemed like, or if I was a fan of that certain thing.
Oh yeah. And see all the new star, I'm such a child of the 80s and 90s and that era of Disney stuff, that the new stuff, and I wasn't such a big Star Wars guy, and so it's like it's fine, but I'm not into it, and so it's like the old Disney stuff and the nostalgia, and the then the older Mickey and Goofy and all that older cartoons from the 60s and 70s that just got replayed that I love. But oh gosh, for me, I thinking about dating myself. I remember when halfway down Main Street, I forget it was called, the theater that they'd run all the cartoons in. That was one of my favorite places at Disneyland. The
Main Street Cinema. Yeah.
Main Street Cinema was good. Yeah, it's just sitting there in the theater and just, on a rainy day or a really hot day, you just going in there to take a break and watch cartoons, nothing better than that, except maybe the caves in Tom Sawyer Island, but yeah, those are fun stuff. But I was, back when I was going there, and my formative years were, back when Splash opened and Fantasmic opened and, Toontown, Indiana Jones. I was the perfect age for indie opening, so for 10 years later, to go get hired there was, amazing, but I actually got to pull the sword out of the stone back when I was little. I went with my cousins once and the Sword in the Stone show that I probably saw, 24 times, one time I got picked, but yeah, I guess it, was, what's the word, like in that, eventually I got to be a prince, so I don't know what that says, but
that's neat though. Yeah, it sounds like, you just had an amazing time at Disney, it sounds like. And do you have anything else you'd like to bring up that we maybe didn't touch on?
Yeah, I mean, it really was an amazing time. I mean, there's so much, I could keep bringing up, but yeah, I don't know what comes to mind now. It was, I guess for me to wrap it up, I was just in the right place at the right time for so much of it. I just kind of fell into so many of these different jobs. I mean, luck favors the prepared. I was able to do the improv and do the dance. I had the different things in my background, magic music days, getting to sing in that choir as a kid. Not that I was a good singer, but those experiences and all that. And I remember you saying, you got to do that as a kid too. And it was like, so I had all that stuff that I think just kind of led me to. I didn't seek out a Disney job, for those reasons, funny enough, but it was just when I kept getting all these really interesting ones around the world, it was always like, hey, yeah, I'll go to that audition too. And not only did I do good, but I really happened to look like a guy that they used to love, and so it's always that kind. I mean, that was why I got Tokyo. I looked like a doppelganger for a guy who they loved for like 7 years, and same thing with like, there's just different other little things throughout, my Disney career. It was like, oh yeah, that, led me to getting that and led me to getting that. But it was like as I kept getting older, I realized, well, those jobs weren't right for growing up and raising a family. And it just, I mean, there's so many different ways to have a Disney career. That's why I love listening to your podcast, because it's that reminder that not everybody had my kind of experience. There's those ways to work there, every different way, and I love listening to, some of the 40, 50 year, custodial guys or different departments, Imagineering or operations but for me, it was like, oh, my experience really was this trip to Pleasure Island, and this chance to extend childhood and keep having fun. To say I worked at the parks is kind of a stretch. I mean, there was the amount of time that I spent taking breaks, I mean, 2-hour breaks and, all kinds of crazy, stuff like that, and then getting back. And when I'm done with my break, I'm going to go, play with Jack Sparrow and Bert, and it's just so much fun that I just think, I was lucky to do it, but then I had to move on from it, and I didn't know how to turn. I was never good at making friends and moving up the company. I saw other people move into roles as show writers or other sorts of stuff. And I just never had an eye for that kind of thing. I always knew, oh, my luck's going to end and I'm going to age out and I just need to go find something else to do in life, and I have, and so I've gone away from Disney in these years, but yeah, it was something else. And sure was some awesome experiences that I love talking with you guys about. And I'm so grateful for you having me on. And I'm so grateful for you guys keeping all your old podcast episodes online, because like I said, I've gone all the way, 12 years back. I listened to Ken's first interview last week. It was great. Yeah, it's so much fun. Just so neat to hear all these different perspectives. And I'm nodding along, oh yeah, that reminds me of this, and even when it doesn't remind me of something, it's just so neat, and so I love your style of doing this, and I hope you keep doing it for a long time. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, Ken, what an episode, right?
Oh yeah, that was I don't think we've had a lot of people who've had the who've worked with the characters,
Yeah.
So getting that perspective is good. It's fascinating. I mean, I worked, one department for, at one park for 15 years, Granted, they moved, got to work all over that park, but, never transferred to another role, became a foreman, but never transferred to another role, never transferred to another, didn't even go to cross the way to California Adventure.
Yeah, he went all the way around the world. So.
That's
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Stephen, so much. We really appreciate you coming on. I love all the great stories. And someone maybe we'll have to have back on to explore some of those a little more. Wanted to touch on a few things before we go, so don't leave. We always ask you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, because that's the one that I use, and that seems to be the most popular one according to our download stats that I get. So I thought I would read this one, and I think it's new. I may have read it last time. It's hard to keep track. So this one says titled "Best Part of My," and I assume day.
Best part of my life.
5 stars. June 22nd, 2023, from Keekert09. Some of these usernames. I have recently gotten into Disney podcasts after being a Disneyland fan for many years. There is something about listening to two people who have been immersed in the parks for a time. I really enjoy listening to the updates and the fun facts about the park. I wait for the newest episode to come out and truly just enjoy listening to your expertise and history. Thank you so much for being a bright spot in so many people's day.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind.
It is.
Thank you for leaving that review, and hope you're continuing to enjoy the podcast.
Yeah. Also, go to our website. We have so much going on there. We have t-shirts, and you can join our Patreon. You can buy our books. They make great gifts if you already have them. So you can do all that on our the show notes for our current events that we record, show notes for this episode. You can go over to thesweepspot.com. Check that out. And also tell a friend, tell a family member.
Tell your enemies. Tell your enemies so that they can endure us too. But I mean, spread the word. Let people know we're here, because then you can talk about the latest episodes with them, and you won't be left out of the discussion. So
that's right.
Tell people how you listen. Tell people how they can listen. It's pretty easy to find us.
Sounds good. Until then, we'll talk with you next time.